Hello, founders. Welcome to Startups.com. We are live. We have a great show for everybody today. As always, Tuesdays are the days we dive into pitch decks. I'm joined by CEO and founder of Startups.com, Will, affectionately known in these parts as the Pitch Deck Doctor. So you are all in for a treat. We've got pitch decks that we're going to look at and wanted to invite everybody to get your questions ready. All you have to do is type in. Let's start off with this one. If you are working on a problem or a task and you want to abscond our show and have us immediately answer, we can do that. You just got to type it in. That's all you got to do. Just type it into the Q&A or the chat. We have Jen here, our lovely co-host. She's going to be watching the socials and the chatter and making sure that she interrupts us as many times as she needs to make sure that your questions are prioritized. Before we continue, I'll let Will introduce himself in just a moment. We want to say this show is brought to you by us here at Startups.com. If you have not checked out already, we have a fantastic podcast called Startup Therapy. It is hosted by Will himself, as well as Ryan, our Chief Marketing Officer. And they have these straight, no holds barred, no BS conversation, what it means to be a founder, about the industry, all the things that everybody kind of knows but doesn't want to talk about openly. They're transparent, they're vulnerable with their experience. If you look at the different topics, we got should our kids follow in footsteps, evolution of entry-level workers, assuming everyone will leave in year one. Was mortgaging my life worth it? That's one that always raises eyebrows and different things like that. So make sure, if you're joining us from Startups.com, a big thank you. Thank you so much for all your support. If you're joining us on YouTube or any other socials, check us out at Startups.com. We got lots of free resources. You can interact with us. Consider joining our community. Will, always a pleasure. Another Tuesday we got going. Just so that everybody knows who you are, introduce yourself. Give us a thumbnail.
Yeah, sure. Will Schroter, founder, CEO of Startups.com. This is my 31st year being a startup founder, my 9th company here at Startups.com. We've got about 1 million founders plus at Startups. And all we get to do is sit around and talk founder stuff all day. Today, we're going to talk about pitch decks, but it's kind of what we do all day is just sit around and help founders. Guys like Ed, smart people, sit around and help you through all these problems. Pitch decks, fundraising, finding customers, you name it. So all the folks that are with us today, kind of sitting live with us, can ask questions. Ed, who are we going to dig into? Who are we going to help out today?
We are going to be talking about the Birthday Club, one of our founders who's been working
That's a cool
really
one. I like
hard.
that one.
Yeah, it's going to be super cool. But here's the thing. As always, if you have a question, type it in the Q&A box or chat right now. We'll prioritize that. If you took the time and you joined us here, we just want to respect your time and appreciate all your participation to answer your questions. But Will, before we begin, I wanted to talk a little bit of a philosophical question because I was discussing it with one of the founders that's joining us right now. And it's the difference between this balance between just putting out in a problem statement an opinion-based thing. Social media is broken. People don't like social media. That's one end of the spectrum. And then the other, barfing up a bunch of facts. And we're talking about an intro screener deck like so. Let me show you, just putting all these facts up there and saying, this is the problem, right? So what is the balance? Because you always talk about adding metrics, adding numbers to the problem statement. We don't want to go into just putting generic statements out that are based on opinions, but at the same time, don't want to overload the investor. Because I was just very straightforward with this founder. And I said, in an introductory screener deck, no investor is ever going to sit there and read your 3 bubbles. So what is the balance?
Okay, let's back up. Let's talk about what the investor wants, what we think that the investor is going to want. Let's go back to that slide for a second, Ed, because I want to dig into what we think the investor is going to digest there. Let's take a look at each of those. Actually, I can't even read it, and I've got a big damn monitor.
Let me read it for you. I can zoom in here. Okay, 80% of homeowners contractors are small, employing fewer than 10 people, and many of them lack the digital infrastructure to seamlessly connect with customers. By the way, Ryan, I know you're there. If you have anything you want to add on the chat, feel free to jump in. We'll go back and forth. But then the next one is 63%. This survey, Home Advisor found that 60% of homeowners report frustration in finding reliable professionals. And then the last one, 54% of homeowners would prefer a centralized service or subscription model of managing their home maintenance.
Okay. Now, here's the challenge, as the founder, when we create these statistics, it's with an idea in our head that they're all leading toward an outcome that we have in our head. But when people read statistics, they all get a different outcome. We assume it's leading to a certain direction, but it's not necessarily leading to the same direction, right? That's with everything in our pitch deck. The challenge we have as founders is we know where we want people to go, but when they read these numbers, they're going to go in all different places. When we show images, they go in all different places. And that's what we have to be really careful of. We have to be very specific about where we want to take people. Ed, when you read that, what's the first thing that came into your mind?
When I first read that, I didn't. I just said, I'm not going to read that because it doesn't actually tell me what you want me to know. You're putting the onus on me to figure it out. And as soon as a founder does that, if I'm acting like an investor, I immediately check out and say, that's not my problem. I'm not going to put the work in. So that was my initial first reaction.
Right. And did you understand who the customer was?
Homeowners, that's what I gleaned, at least when I did take the time to read everything.
Okay, let's go back to it. Let's go back to the slide.
And by the way, Ryan, I know we're just looking at this in principle. We don't care about the design, anything like that. Don't worry. We're just looking at the principles here.
Fine.
Yeah.
Here's what's interesting. And Ryan, I always say this. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time and being brave to put this up here. I've done this. I've been in your shoes where other people are looking at my deck. It is so hard. It's hard to stand back and be like, but. And be like, but I get it. It's hard to watch, right? But other founders are watching this and going, oh, damn, now that I see somebody else going through it, I'm learning from this. So again, it's appreciated by a lot of founders. With that said, Ed, what were the context clues that you got out of this? Again, you said what? Home buyers?
Homeowners who want contractors. That's what I picked up.
But what else did you see here?
I saw they were frustrated in terms of getting services.
Okay, so you saw home improvement contractors, right?
Yep.
They're small. They're employing less than 10 people. Well, that could mean that we're going to be talking about them.
Could be. Yep.
Okay. So if we're introducing that constituent as the first person in the narrative, then that should be who we're going to focus on. That should be our customer. Never open up with the first person you talk about that isn't your customer. You're opening your movie with the wrong opening scene. Okay. So the first words out of our mouth should be who our customer is. So it should be US home buyers. It should be millennials. It should be US woodworkers. It should be whatever our core audience is, whoever our customer is, should be the first words in our problem statement. That is so important because it centers the focus and it centers the rest of the narrative. What we don't want to do is change the focus as we go through the problem. Remember, we've got a very limited window in the attention span of our audience. We don't get a chance to shift gears, right? This is our movie trailer and our audience is barely paying attention. So we only get, again, a very limited window to be able to navigate that. The second thing is you don't get to use percentages. When we say that, when we say 83% or 1 out of 5 people or things like that, we don't get to do that. There's 2 reasons. Number one, when you say 83%, 83% of what? I have no idea what 83% of 6 people. I don't know, right? Because you didn't tell me what the whole number was. The second part of that is, even if you did tell me it was 83% of 100, well, if it's 83% of 100, then the number is 83. Why did you tell me it was 83%? If you already knew the number was 83. And if you knew the number was 83, and you knew that 83 people each spend $1, then tell me they spend $83. As an investor, I just want to know how much money is at play. Don't give me these amorphous statistics. If really I want to know how much money we're talking about, I want you to tell me US home buyers spend $184 billion on home remodeling. That's what I want to know. I don't want to know that 83% of some amorphous number do something, because at the end of the day, I need to know how many dollars are at play. I want to know who the customer is and how much money is being spent or lost. That's the opening statement. And I don't want to do any kind of math or get any kind of blurry stats. So Ryan, I just want you to be hyper specific. And I know you can be, but what you do is you make me go, oh, damn, that's your customer and that's how much money's on the table. I'm interested.
And that's going to be different than, let's say, homeowners are frustrated in getting contractors. That's your loosey-goosey opinion. Okay, an investor's going to say, how do you know? Like, okay, like how many is that? Like 3, 5,
right.
Type thing. But if you said, let's just take some round numbers. Let's say 100 million or homeowners, 63% based on this. You said 63 million homeowners will spend whatever, $2 billion on improving their homes using or waste or something like that. We'll lose, or 10% of that budget will go over. We'll go $1 billion over budget because they can't find the right contractor. I'm just totally making stuff up, but at least now we're putting teeth to it versus inundating the investor with just stats. Okay, that's not going to help. And then just a loosey-goosey opinion without any factual data. Right, Goldilocks principle, put it right in the middle. Do what Will said. Just tell the investor how much to spend, define the problem and how painful it is, and what the cost of that problem is if they don't solve it. Those are things that get an investor excited.
You bet. So let's go back to the problem statement. Let's go back to that slide. And this is a really easy formula that's incredibly hard for people to put together. And when I say it's easy to understand, but like a lot of things in life, hard to actually do. A guitar itself only has a handful of strings, but it doesn't make it easy to play, right? Like, when we're taking these 3 stats, Ryan, what I'd love to see you do is boil this down into one core fact. What I'd love for you to be able to say is that homeowners are spending this much money, but they're having this problem doing it. When they go to spend this much money, they have this core problem, which is the second part of this. The first part is who these people are and how much they're either making or losing, in this case, losing. The second part is what's the frustration with spending that money. Let me try to read the second part. Okay, Ed, let's isolate scheduling delays and lack of communication, because I bet that's going to be a key part of the pain points.
Sure.
Because the second part of a problem statement is where the pain points come in, and we're going to isolate this part of the conversation. The next part, 54% of homeowners would prefer a centralized service or subscription model for managing their home maintenance, highlighting the growing desire for convenience and trustworthiness. Hang on one second. We just said that they're frustrated with finding reliable professionals. Okay, so that's one category. Major pain point, scheduling delays and lack of communication. But I think we just introduced another pain point, or a bucket at least, a centralized service subscription model for managing their home maintenance. So one was scheduling reliable professionals. Another's managing home maintenance, which is also scheduling reliable professionals, highlighting the growing desire for convenience and trustworthiness. These are a lot of tentacles. Ryan, these are all issues, but we got to pick the ones we feel like are the most important. So, Ed, we got to pause on this if you don't mind. So I want to unpack this one.
Yeah.
For all of us, when we build products, we get really angsty because we have so many things that we want to solve. And Ed, how many times do people come to you and say, but I solve all of this stuff?
But our solution does so much more. It's going to transform the way that we interact with technology.
Right. And I get it. It's awesome. It's awesome. Look, I'm not knocking it. Remember, the investors only have what I say so much RAM, meaning they can only store so much stuff. When I mean attention, they can remember like two things on a good day, and it has nothing to do with their intellectual capacity. It's they have 900 other things to think about. Best case, on this slide, they will remember one, maybe two things that you just said. You rattle off 20, guaranteed they'll now remember nothing.
Now, let me add one other dimension before Will continues. From an investor standpoint, if I'm writing a check, and I've written checks, and I have also had to go and present, hey, LP, I would like all of us to write a check from the fund to this startup. And if I'm on that side of the table and a founder comes to me and says, we solve like 10 problems, even 5 problems, immediately what I start to think is, okay, there's competition, there's going to be work that requires resources. I don't think my money or your money or anybody's money is going to stretch that far, and it's a big risk. I want to know where you are going to go and dominate first. And even if you're wrong, at least we figure it out and move on to the next one. And I totally expect founders to like have to iterate, because usually founders are pretty much wrong always on their first go at it. Yeah. But that's what I'm thinking with my money. So if you hit me with multiple problems, I don't think my money is going to be best spent. And that is a red flag.
I agree. Also, if you don't solve the thing that's most important, the rest of the stuff doesn't matter, right? In every product, there's a primary thing that your product does that's the most important thing, that if it doesn't do that, the rest of the stuff doesn't matter. Think about it like buying a car. If you don't like the actual car, right? Maybe it's the style or the fact that the car actually operates as a car, or your phone can't make phone calls. The rest of the stuff kind of doesn't matter. You don't buy a car because it has sweet heated seats, right? You buy a car because you need a car and it has sweet heated seats, right? It has a primary function. So you have to make sure that your primary function, you are badass at, you're amazing at, that you've nailed the primary function. So Ryan, for this one, we've got to take a look at all the stuff you do. Then we'll go through an exercise and we'll stack rank, right? And by priority, what's the most important thing you do? And we'll make sure that gets a headline. And then we'll look at number 2 and we'll say, look, if we did that one thing better than anything, would that be enough to make this interesting? And that doesn't mean throughout the rest of the deck, we can't talk about the other stuff later. But on this slide, with one shot to really capture people's attention, we got to remember, everything we add is dead weight. That drags down the focus and the attention and the comprehension of this slide. So if we say, wow, I want it to be 3 things, I'm going to say, okay, but you're sacrificing the focus and the attention of this slide. And it's not minor, right? If we could say we do this thing and we are so good at it, and it's one thing, and then in later slides we say, hey, and then we'll expand to other things, we win. That is the golden opportunity. But we got to keep it focused.
Just as a side here, if you got questions, if this conversation is sparking any questions, feel free to use the Q&A box or the chat right now.
Yep.
I wanted to add to what you said, Will. This is a common issue that I see in these marketplace types startups where they're connecting buyers and sellers. The sellers are always going to say, hell yeah, get me more customers. Right. Hell yeah, I want to talk to customers, et cetera. That's never the problem. Problem is getting the buyers to actually go and do it. So immediately you can X off that first bubble. Like you don't have to talk. You can say, and we make it later on in the deck, just like Will said, and we make it so much easier because we got real-time chat and, all these things. And the experience is going to be great. But that's not the main problem that you need to solve, because guess what? It's not a problem. Everyone's going to say, yeah, get me more customers type thing. You want to stack rank based on what you think you have the best opportunity to go out there and make money, prove to an investor, get people to run to you and say, thank God for you. This has been a pain in my life. And the fact that you're solving it, you're even thinking about solving it, take my money right now. Like sign me up, whatever it takes. And you will find a way to communicate to homeowners and any of your users out there, for all you other founders, in a way that makes them jump out of their seat. Investors love seeing that.
You bet. Let's jump to the solution and take a look at where we're headed with this thing.
The solution, I didn't put in the solution yet. I didn't get the permission, but I wanted to just share how we go through the different steps of, do we have just an opinion-based problem, or do you, oh, guess what? Ryan just gave me the permission right there. I saw that coming. Jen, just want to confirm or deny. All right, here's what we're going to do. Appreciate you, Ryan. You are a good sport. You're a scholar and a gentleman. He's been around with us for a while, so he knows what's going on. And he just had an exit. Congratulations, Ryan. This is his second venture right there.
That's amazing.
Well
done, man. And while you're figuring that out, Ryan, I'd be remiss in not mentioning I'm a carpenter. So when we're talking about remodeling and home repair, et cetera, I am to say I'm a carpenter would be putting it mildly. I am obsessed with carpentry. I'm building a massive workshop as we speak. Ed's been in there. Actually comes.
I've experienced the glory myself. Okay, so I'll give you the story up to this point in time, Will. So Ryan and I were going back and forth, and he basically gave me this problem slide, right? And I gave him the same advice we gave everybody else. I'm like, those statements are, all 1, 3, all over the place, et cetera. And so he came back to me. Now, to Ryan's credit, he put in the work. He said, I'm going to find some stats to prove. He put some teeth on the size, severity, scope of the problem. And then the solution is a turnkey data-driven home maintenance. So it's a platform. I'll let you read it, and then you tell Ryan what you're gleaning from this.
Okay. Well, the first thing I'm looking for, Ryan, as soon as I see this, is I'm looking to connect whatever you said this solution is to specifically what you said the problem is. And this is such an easy exercise for me because, I see this a lot. And so when I look at the problem, I'm looking for like a keyword. So I see peace of mind, I see freedom, I see trust. I want to make sure that whatever you're telling me the solution is, that's specifically the focal point of what you said the problem is. The problem statement and the solution statement have to work symbiotically. Specifically, whatever we said the problem was, the solution statement has to have addressed that problem wholly. Let me give you some examples where that comes off the rail all the time. A lot of times in the problem statement, people make very broad problems. Actually, Ed, do we have the ability to go back to his problem statement that we were looking at a moment ago?
Yes, we do. Hang on, take a look.
Bring that up. I'll show an example, and Ryan, I'm not picking on you for this one. I'm just going to point it out just so I can reference it. And again, this doesn't exactly apply to you, but I'm just going to give you an idea. This is the earlier deck that had the percentages.
Nope. Oh, you want the percentages there? Let me just do this here.
Yeah. So, and maybe I can reference it as a whole. I was going to try to be specific. Okay. 80% of home improvement contractors are small, employing fewer than 10 people. We can't solve that problem. And I know you weren't suggesting that, but I'm just going to give you an example. We never want to put a problem that we cannot solve. For example, it's once a week. Global warming is a huge problem. Can't use that. You're not allowed to use that problem statement because you can't solve it. We can only talk about problems that we can solve, that we can meaningfully address. So if what we were building was a solar panel that was 40% more efficient, then our problem has to be limited to the efficiency of solar panels. We can't talk about global warming and how this solar panel will address global warming. We have to limit the problem to the scope of our solution. Otherwise, they aren't connected. They aren't symbiotic. So and let's go back to that solution statement, the current one. So when I look at that solution statement, the first thing I'm looking at is whatever Ryan just said is in his solution. Did he say that specifically was the problem? And I do see some connection points, so that's good. So Turnkeys Home Maintenance Subscription does it all for you by providing scheduled, predictive maintenance in addition to housekeeping, repairs, and renovations. I don't remember if you said housekeeping, you might have. I don't remember if you said repairs, and I don't remember if you said renovations, but this is what I'm talking about. You presented a concept to me 5-10 minutes ago, and I can't remember it. And I do this for a living, right? I can't remember it because it was quite a bit of information, and I see a lot of decks. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Had you presented the information in the problem statement with fewer words and maybe bolded just those words, it would have been easy for me to connect and remember those two. That's where fewer words, more focus is absolutely critical here. What I want to see in the problem statement is your most painful focal points. In your solution statement, I want to see your most painful solution points, ideally the same things, bolded. Now, the bolding is up to you. I'm just saying I want to see those two things connected. But now in the bottom right, and let's go back to that for just a second. In the bottom right, we're adding some new stuff. We're talking about peace of mind, freedom, increased home value, trust. But we didn't connect that to anything. This gets dangerous. These are a bunch of concepts that absolutely make sense to you We also have a stock photo that makes sense to you, but our audience doesn't necessarily make the same connection that you do, Ryan. And again, these aren't tough concepts to understand. Don't get me wrong. But the tricky thing is when we add new stuff, we're rolling the dice on how that makes sense to our audience. Ed, what do you think about that?
Let me throw in a comment. I'm going to add to what you said, and then I want to backtrack a bit. Furthermore, if you add new stuff that applies to the customer and you're talking to the customer, you can now have peace of mind if you use our software. The investor, it doesn't necessarily connect. Now, it might, and you score, but you're taking a risk. And a lot of decks, I find, try to sell, and they use buzzy marketing words to sell the customer, and it doesn't speak to the investor. What speaks to the investor are those numbers, those pain points. On top of which, just to be very just straightforward, I want to be explicit and illustrate what Will was sharing. If your problem statement says 1 million people spend $3 billion a year because something is slow, manual, and expensive, you better say, we're solving the problem for those 1 million people. They're going to spend less because our solution is fast, automated, and cheaper. Right? It is literally working backwards. If you can connect those two, that's when you're going to have a winner.
I want to go back to the problem statement because this is starting to gel for me a little bit. And as a founder, I can't help but.
You want to go to those three bubbles, or do you want to go to the other?
I want to start working on a pitch deck. I can't help myself.
Which one do you want to go to, the bubbles or the fragmented?
Let's go to the current pitch deck on the problem slide. I see my man Hess in the audience. Hess has been with me. He knows I can't help myself. Okay, so the problem, the fragmented home services industry. I don't want it to be the fragmented home services industry. And Ryan, this is your deck, not mine, man. I just love doing this stuff. You said the home services industry, but then you said the home maintenance industry. I feel like I want to tie that together. I feel like, and you said fragmented, but part of your next slide, Ed, I'm going to ask you to jump back and forth for me if you don't mind.
Sure.
We're opening with the fragmented home services industry, but when we jump back to the solution, we just said the data-driven home maintenance industry. These aren't the same thing. I need to connect those because I love this concept. I mean, I absolutely love this concept, right? I agree that home maintenance as a subscription is a genius market, but I hate the way this is being presented, which again, I mean, that's what we're here to fix, right? Or address and help with, right? So I feel like, Ed, help me out here. I feel like this concept of home maintenance is a huge problem, but I feel like we haven't captured the pain of it.
Agreed.
First, I don't think we've captured the category in that problem statement as home maintenance. Did you see it that way? I saw services as fragmented.
Totally. Home services, like I'm already totally confused. If you would have told me now, being a homeowner, and I am horrible at home maintenance, like this, I am like right there, sign me up. Okay, so let's talk from customer discovery, my standpoint. The reason that I don't do home maintenance properly is because I forget and because I don't know who to contact. Just really straightforward. So if you talk about the fact that this is the pain point, and this costs me a lot of money because I forget, then I got to do repairs and all these things, and I could have avoided all those costs. If you would have told me, hey, listen, we're going to put you on a subscription, tell you we need to get this, and we're going to send somebody out, like right away, like your home maintenance is up in a month from now, just like I get a notification for my oil change. These oil change guys are amazing now. They send me, you're due for this, you're due for that. Just want to let you know, you've probably driven this amount of time. I'm like, oh yeah. And then they say, oh, by the way, here's a coupon. You can get free windshield wipers. And I'm like, I am so there. It's the same principle, but I'm agreeing with you, Will. It's not communicated. I'm thinking, man, this is great. Sign me up. But it's not communicated in this deck.
I am the home maintenance guy for like everyone I know. Same way, like some people are like the network or like the Best Buy. What's the nerd service that they call it?
Geek Squad. Geek
right?
Squad, yeah.
Whatever. And so everyone calls me, so I get it, right?
Yeah.
None of my friends understand any of this stuff, so they call me, right? And that's the thing. I get this service so well, and I think there's an opportunity to be like, hey, most of the people we're going to be talking to are homeowners, right? So they're going to understand this. I wonder if there's the average homeowner is going to spend, I'm going to make up a number, $3,800 this year on a bunch of services to maintain their home, and they have no idea how to actually do it. We allow them to make one phone call and never think about home maintenance again. You know, just something that shows like, here's their frustration throughout the year and the massive bill they're going to spend. And here's them concierging the whole thing and never thinking about it again.
Yeah, and a lot of just letting you know, like Will and I were talking about this willy-nilly, pun intended, I guess. We're just saying stuff because we get to sit around and do this. We fully recognize and acknowledge that you as founders, you're sitting there, you're in the suck. Like you're in so deep and you can't see the forest, you know, through the trees, right? But I can assure you that if you can find the way to communicate it, you know, we've got one founder who's in cybersecurity. And he found a way to explain his unique value proposition. And he said, in cybersecurity, most people either build a wall, like a big moat or a wall, or they put all this surveillance camera around there and they watch your stuff. We do things differently. We turn your diamonds into coal. So even if people steal them, can't do anything with it. It's the most genius thing. He basically explains it in 30 seconds and everybody gets it, right? And I can tell you the big players that are now courting him to say, can we invest? Can we buy your stuff? That message resonates. But if you ask him, it took him months and so many schwacks at it to get it. And that's the whole message here, is that we're going to work at it. Like, we'll work at it together. Yep. Jen, you're watching the chatter there. What comments or questions are there that we can bring up that are relevant?
Relevant. Well, I do have a question that came in here from Hess. It's a great question to ask. Many people ask this question. It's what service do you recommend for hosting the pitch deck online instead of sending as a PDF in an email?
I'm seeing a whole bunch. I say Google Drive is your basic, Dropbox, and then I'm seeing a lot of people use DocSend because it's part of Dropbox. I didn't know until I actually looked it up that Dropbox bought them, but it allows you to track and all those things. Those would be my like primary go-tos that I've seen. Will, have you seen any other ones?
Yeah, here's what I would say. Use literally anything so long as you do not send it as an attachment.
Exactly.
I mean, I got to say, the moment I get a deck as an attachment, I know it's an unsophisticated founder. And look, I'm okay with that. I mean, our life is unsophisticated founders, right? If anybody's appreciative of that situation, it's us, right? It's kind of what we live for. Investors, not so much. They do not appreciate it all. Ryan mentioned Slidebean. Kai is awesome. Slidebean's great service.
But why, Will? Why? I have founders, I tell them to do this, and I just say, I give all these reasons, and they say, I still want to send it as attachment. Explain, why do you look like an unsophisticated founder?
Mobile phones. No one can download an attachment on a mobile phone. And 90% of the time, your email is going to get received on a mobile phone before it ever gets received on a desktop. That's simple.
You have to remember, everyone.
Get your attachment.
Yes, founders, now investors are looking at decks and they're squeezing everything in. I talked about this last time. I looked at all my decks during travel on mobile. And on top of which, even if I could download to my iPad, I'm sitting on some really bad internet Wi-Fi connection at the airport, or I'm gobbling up my data. I am not downloading that attachment.
Right. It's the same reason I tell people, like, they're like, hey, I should include a video with my deck. No, you shouldn't. You know how hard it is to see a tiny little video on a phone with a bunch of little text on it? It's a terrible way in the sunlight or in your car, or like, it's the worst thing to do. Right? Keep it simple.
Absolutely. Jen, anything else?
Hey, let's jump ahead. I want to see more of this deck, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. We can do that. Let's take a look at it here.
Okay, it says business overview. Is this kind of how it works?
Looks like it. It's subscription based, so that's how it works. And then all the features down at the bottom.
Just as a note, the slide is telling me to go in 4 different places with my eye. 3 technically, but I'm going to the top left, I'm going somewhere in the middle, and I'm going across the bottom. This is minor, but the designer in me can't lose sight of this. It doesn't have a focal point. It's a little bit dangerous because it's asking a lot of me to kind of follow this. Generally speaking, the slides want to have a focal point to say, where do you want my eye to go? What do you want me to follow? Just be mindful that when you're designing the slide. Ed, when you see this for the first time, where does your eye go? What's your focal point?
My focal point is the main headline. That's what I'm always going to read first. So I'm reading Turnkey is a subscription-based home maintenance program.
We did already say that, though, on the previous slide, right?
Yes. And then immediately what I start to do is I go to the easiest stuff to ingest. I don't like to read paragraphs of text. So I'm just actually going to look at those icons. I get drawn to the visual first, and then I flip through the icons, each one.
Visually, your eye will always go to the heaviest weighted things, which is why bold is bold. It feels like that second sentence, Turnkey simplifies home ownership, is essentially the title sentence of this. It feels like Turnkey is a subscription-based home maintenance program is kind of what we already said in the solution. And perhaps the idea that we're offering a comprehensive range of scheduled services might be the title of this slide, because essentially what we're doing is teeing up the range of services that we provide. But we have essentially 2 lists that we're talking about here. We have things like appliance filters, and then we have things that are kind of categorical of what we do as a whole. I'm curious as to what's more important here. And I'm trying to, I understand there's 2 ways to do this, but I'm wondering what would be a priority. All your stuff in one place, predictive maintenance, centralized comms, trusted subcontractor network, on-demand repair and renovation. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. Then we have all the trades as well.
I can jump in, Will. Taking a page out of your book. Personally, I want to see what the homeowner is going to care about, right? And if I had the ability to take this, I'd have a how it works slide with the journey straightforward. Sign up, get the AI measures the stuff, gets sent to you a notification reminder, you pay, you're done type thing. And maybe if you want to have like a little array that you can get gutter cleaning and everything like that. But walking through, just like, we use this example through our pitch deck perfection course, Uber. It's just very straightforward. Bam, hail a taxi, take a ride, this and that. To me, that's going to be more important to illustrate than throwing everything there, saying, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this, and then getting me lost in the process. That's my opinion.
Okay, let's go back to it though. And someone else asked a great question. Would a user story be useful here? And I said only if absolutely necessary. And I want to expand upon that a little bit. I hear user story and tell a story a lot. And user stories can be great, but sometimes they get wordy. Ed, we talk about meandering. Do you see that a lot?
I see it tons, paragraphs of every step.
And mind you, a user story is only usually useful if you can personally tell the story. They're often very hard to do when you're not there with the deck. Ed, can you explain a little bit the difference between the deck that you send out to investors that's naked versus the one you present?
Sure. So it's just straightforward. One has a narrator, so you have you to present,
Yeah.
and the other one, you don't. So an introductory screener deck is going to be maximum 10, maybe 12 slides. If you can get it lower, that'd be great. For them, the investor to say, wow, that makes total sense. I'm going to send this along to the associates, or I'm going to say, hey, please book me for a meeting. I'd like to see the rest. Then you're going to have an actual pitch deck. That's where you get to talk, and you want the focus to be on you, not necessarily them reading a paragraph of text and having to bounce back and forth, or you droning on. Like, you're not reading an audiobook to them. This is not a book reading. You're not going to just read the text and then keep flipping to the next slide. They're going to say, well, why can't I just read this ahead of time? So you're going to be there live, and so your slides are going to operate fundamentally differently to elicit conversation and get them to ask questions. Those are the two differences.
You bet. And the reality is your deck is going to be a standalone. It's going to stand on by itself 90% of the time, because you're always going to send it ahead of time without you. And 10% of the time you're going to present it. So the user stories sometimes are challenging because you're not there to kind of tell the whole story, the narrative. And on a slide deck, that's 12 slides that have 2 sentences per slide. Sometimes it's hard to tell that story. That said, I also don't know that you need to say that much here. Let's go back to the slide, Ed. There's a lot here that I want to say, though. So for the different types of services, we definitely have to talk about that, because we've been saying it at a high level. We got to nail it home. I almost don't hate maybe using some of the real estate on that solution slide for the services. I feel like we could maybe establish some of that here. I would almost rather see that grid where we're seeing peace of mind and increased home value. Because if we're talking about home maintenance, what a great opportunity to use what's essentially some dead space below that to nail what the services themselves are.
Totally agree.
And then perhaps when we go, let's flip back, Ed, if you wouldn't mind, to this part, maybe we start to talk more about the mechanics of this thing. Because I don't think there's a lot of narrative that we need around gutter cleaning and appliance filters. I think as soon as we see that's tied to home maintenance, that feels pretty tight. I think once we get into some of these really deep kind of what the product is, this idea that we're doing predictive maintenance, that we've got this trusted embedded subcontractor network, that's really what like the depth of the product is. That's probably what I'd want to see on full display here, and maybe kind of lighten this up a little bit and focus it. What do you think, Ed?
I agree with you 100%. You know what I like about your suggestion? You see this whole section right here in terms of this, what you got here, what Will highlighted, all these services, that to me illustrates the problem very well, in the sense that I'm sitting here as a homer going, gutter cleaning, appliance filters, this and that, type thing. That's part of the problem. That is part of the problem here is, man, I got all these things I have to be thinking about, and I don't have the bandwidth to do that. So if you told me, then here's the problem, and your solution consolidates all that into a predictive maintenance subscription package and tells me when I should get all that stuff done, there, your problem solution are connected.
Ryan, this might have been too late to introduce that thing. That might be your gold right there, right? Just, as a visual. There might be some cooler ways to introduce that visual. Like just, again, this is the designer in me. The designer in me might see some iconography around some of those nodes, around landscaping, roof cleaning, et cetera, just to make it, a little bit more visually unique. But to your point, Ed, I think visually when I saw those, I could really connect with the kind of expansiveness of how many things those are. And they're frustrated and they're expensive and they're hard to maintain. Again, I think there's no question that this is a big problem. And I think this is something that's really easy to identify with. So I think it's fantastic. But I think this is a separate concept. When we get to this slide specifically, I think there's some cool stuff in here. I like this AI-powered predictive maintenance. I don't honestly believe it's AI-powered. I'm not giving you a hard time about your business. I'm kidding. But I think it doesn't have to be that AI-powered. I think that your hot tub stuff could just be scheduled. I just think the fact that it exists at all, that someone's paying attention to any of it, just needs to exist. The fact that you're getting notifications, this is kind of a funny story. When I bought my house 26 years ago, the guy was like, and so you have something called an aerator inside your septic tank. and you need to like, reset it at whatever time. There's like an alarm that's going to go off when you need to do it. Otherwise the whole thing is going to like blow up or something. And I was like, 26 or something. I was like, oh really? And so the alarm goes off, and my fix for it was to flip the breaker to just turn the alarm off so I'd never have to listen to it again. And so that thing was off for like 10 years. It caused a massive problem. And I remember thinking, like, I probably should have been paying attention or had a service like this. So somebody way smarter than me could have, like, my house just went to hell in a handbasket because I didn't pay attention to anything. And I think, like, how great it would have had to be, like, all these reminders for people smarter than me that would have figured all this stuff out.
I want to ask you a question, Will, about this AI, because it's a common theme that's coming up with our founders. Before I do that, if you have any other questions, hit that FAQ box or the chat. Jen, I'm going to leave you.
I love when you guys ask.
I'm going to leave you to organize it and be ready if we need to answer some questions. But, Will, this whole concept, everybody's slapping AI on everything right now. It's AI driven, AI powered, AI this, AI that. And we call it AI washing. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, investors are tired of looking at all this thing. Unless you're open AI, unless you're AIX or XAI or whatever Elon Musk is, et cetera. All this, it's created so much noise. Same thing with, we're putting everything on the blockchain. Everything's an NFT, et cetera. Will, what is your recommendation for founders to communicate? Well, even decide, do we even add AI to this? And then two, how do you communicate it?
I think it's become table stakes. Again, yes. Like people have replaced the word software to being AI. And yeah, I'm not giving Ryan a hard time. Maybe it is AI. I'm kidding. What I'm saying is I think the bar for what is AI, to your point, has gotten extremely high. Right. So if you're going to say we're an AI company, you got to have a lot of AI. Like, and we see a ton of stuff, and some of the stuff I'm seeing right now, like what is now considered AI is way out there. Saying that we have an API out to ChatGPT or something like that just ain't cutting it anymore. Like you have to be pretty far along. That said, I don't think it hurts you. I think it's a lot harder to make that claim among investors than it was, say, a year or two ago. And like, again, I think we hit that same threshold somewhere along the line in crypto where everything was blockchain, right? It was like, well, yes, but it's on the blockchain now. It's like, no, it's not. Like you're taking a concept that makes no sense on the blockchain and just saying blockchain because you heard everybody was saying it has to be on blockchain. And this has nothing to do with what Ryan's doing. I'm just saying generally across the board. I think what you're saying is AI has gotten a little played out in pitch decks.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of hitting that. So if you're going to use AI, make sure that you are like inventing some AI, not that you just got some basic use case of it.
Okay. And, Ryan's given us a response here, but let me give just some generic advice. I have the benefit of working on pitch decks through our Fundable Accelerator, seeing how investors respond and what they respond to. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, when someone just says AI driven and they don't explain it, investors aren't responding. But in this case, what everybody wants to know is what is the use case of the AI? So if you're using AI and you can say, we can pull a unique data set, even if you're using ChatGPT. I use a service right now. It's amazing. I'm so in love with this. I think it's going to be the future of billion-dollar AI companies. What they allow me to do is plug my stuff into any of the open like language models out there. It gives me like a list of 16 or 17 that I can pick from, the one that works best. And then it reads my stuff and it interacts with me and pre-prompts me. So I'm not, what they call raw dogging prompts and just you're prompting right into ChatGPT. It's actually assisting my prompts with my information. And so if you have a use case or you can argue and you pitch, this is how we're using OpenAI. This is how we're using Claude. This is how we're using all these services to read the data and make the experience better or give us insights. Then you're golden. Investors will love that story. But if you just say AI, and again, we're just not throwing this deck under the bus because I'm sure you've explained it in the future. And I know Ryan, he's working with a full AI team. We're just using it as a general conversation point for all the founders who are going to be listening to this.
You bet. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Next slide is here.
All right. Hey, on this one, before I digest it, one piece of advice, not specific to Ryan, but just to anyone. Let's go back to the slide, Ed. What I would love to see on the slide before I digest it is a single summary sentence at the top that before I read a thing, just tells me what you want me to take away from this slide. And this is really the case for every slide. A single summary sentence, because I'm probably not going to read the whole slide. This is almost the case always. And because how I'm going to digest this may not be the way you think I'm going to digest this. This saves everyone. It saves me time, but it also saves you from wondering if I'm going to have the same takeaway you do. Now, you might be looking at it going, well, how could you possibly get a different takeaway than I do? It's all right there. Trust me. It's one, no one reads. And number two, particularly among us as founders, we've been thinking about this nonstop. Our audience has been thinking about it for 3 seconds. It's really easy to mistake. Ed, your thoughts there?
Well, let me take a stab at it. Well,
sure. Yeah,
let's see if I've learned. I'm a good Padawan learner here.
All right.
If I said this was the main sentence for something like this, We charge a monthly subscription plus a percentage of all services transacted through our platform as one big sentence. And then I had little details such as the price, etc. How would that work for you?
Perfect.
Yeah. That's all you got to do.
I don't need to read the rest of the slide. That's all I need to know. Honestly, that's it. Mission accomplished. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to have the rest of the slide. I'm saying for most folks, as they're burning through the deck, and again, some folks are like, oh, no, I'm actually really interested in this whole partnership thing. But you got to figure every investor that's going through this, they all have their hot buttons as to what part of the deck they care about. Some care about acquisitions, some care about tax, some care about the financials, whatever. You want to give everybody a taste on every slide quickly without having them to like deep dive on everything. And if you do this well, just like you did, Ed, that was actually great for shot. Then it's just such an easy thing to do. It's kind of a cover your ass move too. That way, if for some reason you whiffed on the way you presented the information below, or they just weren't willing to read, you just made everybody's life easy. That's just a general across the board. That said, I do think this is an easy slide to read. So I'm not knocking this slide at all. This was info for everybody.
Okay, next slide.
All right, so this is the TAM slide.
Yeah.
Let's see how we digest it. I'm visually going from 600 to 360 to 180, and then I'm jumping over to 4 billion. So give me a sec to think of how I'm going to visually digest it.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
I've got 600 billion U.S. services market. Okay. I don't know what that means. The U.S. services could mean anything, but I'm not overthinking it. I'm just giving you fresh thoughts. 360 billion homeowners in top 50 metros. I don't know if that means $360 billion worth of homes in the top 50 metros. It might. 180 billion top 20% of income earners in the US in those 50 metros. I'm not sure if subs or if those are just three random cuts. I think those might be.
Well, okay. So imagine, Will, and I'm just trying to triage it just a little bit. Imagine I said in that blue 600 billion, I would say all US homeowners spend $600 billion on home services, such as painting, blah, blah, blah. And the top homeowners of 50 metros, which is where we're going to focus, spend $360 billion. And we think we can, I don't know if you'd say this, but if we top 20%, maybe that's where we focus. And they spend 180 billion. And that's the market we're going to go for. I'd have to have a little more information, but if I tier stepped it, then I think it makes a little more sense.
How did you take that away?
I inferred it based on conversations I had with Ryan, previous information, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, and again, I'm not being critical. I was trying to see what keys you got from that information. And you know what's fun about this? And I love when Ryan and founders like him allow us to present these decks, because when folks like us, other founders see it for the first time, you get to see what fresh eyes, like how we process this stuff. And you're like, damn, that seemed really obvious to me. Like, hey, 360 billion, like how could you not get that? Ed and I are pretty smart guys, right? And I want to know this. I want to digest this. I'm not being critical at all. And I'm not seeing it the way you see it, but that's sort of my point.
Yes, exactly.
When we're the founders putting this deck together, we lose that connection. We forget that people don't see things the way we see them. And that's why it helps to share the deck and allow other people to see it. And a lot of times, we do these deck reviews all the time. And a lot of times when people put their decks out there, as soon as they see somebody digesting it, they're like, oh God, here we go. Like, they're like, how did I not see that? Right. So Ed, when you saw this for the first time, did you instantly get it, or did Ryan walk you through it?
No,
I didn't see it.
I didn't instantly get it. And we're running out of time. I want to just leave this because Will's point is so salient here in terms of all of us are looking at it from different angles.
Yeah.
For you founders out there who are watching this, we're going to leave you with this. You want to make sure that if you're trying to create a market slide, look up three things: top-down analysis, bottom-up analysis, and value theory. Do yourself a favor. Just take a 5-10 minute spin and you'll go, oh, that's the reason Ed gets so cranky when I just quote a number from a Gartner report on cybersecurity is a $3 trillion industry, type thing. Is that, oh, that's the reason Ed pushes us. And Will's the same way and talks about those three ways that you can do it. Do yourself a favor, go check that out. Jen, I wanted to make sure, and I know I'm rushing through. Will, you and I, we could spend like another 8 hours walking through this.
We could be
a lot of fun. Yeah. So, Jen, any questions that we're missing? Okay. So, Will, what's your final encouragement to Ryan and just appreciation for him volunteering?
Yeah.
We kind of went off the beaten path here.
First off, I love this concept. All right. So all the stuff that we're talking about here, Ryan, as you probably got sense, this isn't us being critical whatsoever. This is going to be an awesome business. And these are things we can do to make this deck more awesome. All we're talking about is focus. This isn't like, hey, this is a bad idea. This is, hey, let's focus these slides even more. But what you did really well here is you've got the raw clay to work with. That's the hardest part. You've got the ideas there. We're just shaping them to get them more focused. That's the easy part, because we have a formula that we use that just says, whenever we have the raw clay, we use it this way, we apply this formula, and we get the results we want. So all we need for you guys to do is put those decks out there. So keep sending us what you have. And as you make these refinements, send it to us again. We'll get it right every time.
And here's the best part, everyone. Once you get Will attached to your pitch deck and he is emotionally invested, he'll continue to work with you.
I can help myself. I love this stuff. Yeah.
So Ryan, I am going to connect you with Will, just like we've done with the other founders, and he's going to take you the rest of the way. Ryan, I appreciate your encouragement. Will, always appreciate your input. To all the founders here who are watching this, who have joined us, appreciate all of you. Make sure you do the social media thing. Like, comment, subscribe. It always helps us out. We'd love to hear the feedback on the things that you want to see next. We've got guests lined up. We've got different types of topics, and we're always going to be doing Q&A, and we're working on pitch decks every Tuesday. We are here every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Will, pleasure as always. Jen, thanks for having our backs, and we'll see you in the next episode, everyone. See ya.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.